One husband, one wife.
Both true crime fans.
A different case every episode.
One terrifying story at a time.
I'm Carla.
And I'm Philip.
Welcome to Terrifying and Twisted.
Well, my name is Philip.
Oh, episode 10.
Episode 10.
I'm not going to say, did you enjoy episode 9? Because it was horrific.
It was a rough case read.
I could have cried.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say, I hope you enjoyed it. But I hope you think that Phil did a good job.
I tried to.
You did.
And it seemed to go really quick for 8.5 pages of research.
Yeah, it always does though.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Always.
So don't think I'm not putting the effort in, because believe me, I am putting the effort in.
We always put the effort in.
Yeah.
Same as always then, what we've been up to.
Still kids' holidays.
It's dragging.
Yeah. Because we literally said that about an hour ago. Because we've recorded back to back again. One of the other things that we've been watching, binge watching, is The Challenge. I've always wanted to watch it, we've just never got around to watching it, and we've come to a point where we're not really watching anything, no series or anything like that. So we started The Challenge series 41. We binge watched that, and now we're on number 40. While 42 builds up. And it's good, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I can't. Obviously, it's a competition, and obviously everybody's so competitive. But it's the drama inside the house that's the highlight for me. And some challenges are nuts.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them about what you've been doing for the last 14 days, or whatever it is?
So, I'm going to make an admission right now. On our previous episode, episode 8, I introduced the fact that I was watching very closely the Lindsay Clancy trial. And when I watched our episode back, I was wrong.
Oh, my heart. Say that again.
I was wrong.
Shit.
So I went into this trial fully expecting to really dislike this woman. Really, I knew very little about the case, just that this woman had been accused of killing her 3 very young children, and that she was suffering with postpartum psychosis at the time. And I have watched religiously. Every day, Monday to Friday, 2 till 8.
She's watching it as she's doing her uni work at the same time, so I don't know how she can concentrate. So when your next assignment comes back and you've epically failed, then you know why.
Yeah, maybe. So I've been watching it very closely, and I've got no shame in saying that I went into that trial fully expecting that this were cut and dry, and this woman was an evil. We've seen it before. Women do kill their children. Premeditatedly, evilly kill their children. I do not believe that Lindsay Clancy is in that same bracket.
Right.
And that is I've completely flipped. So yeah, I've been following it extremely closely. I've been watching everything, every testimony, every bit of evidence, and arguing with people on TikTok.
If you don't know anything about it, you can obviously Google it, but Carla has shared a lot of her opinions on her TikTok at
Carla, Chaos, Crime and Real Life, or real, whichever way it is. I can't remember my own name on TikTok, but I'm on there, and I have put a lot of opinions on there. So yeah, we watched Karen Reid very closely.
Yeah. Very
closely. And can you remember the amount of times that me and you scratched our head at some of the evidence that was used within that trial? That's how I feel with this.
A lot of head scratching.
A lot of head scratching.
A lot of,
Yeah. There's a lot of holes, a lot of not adding up, a lot of that makes no sense. And I believe that two things can be true at the same time. Was Lindsay Clancy suffering with her mental health and possibly postpartum psychosis? Absolutely. Could it also be possible that she, in fact, didn't kill them kids? Absolutely. But that's all I'm going to say on it, because, you know.
So, I'd just like to say, if you are new to this podcast, if this is the first one that you've clicked on, welcome. We are brand new. We've been going about 2 months. We've done one previously a few years ago, but this is our new refurbed version.
Yep.
We try our best with case reads. We swear quite a bit.
Yeah.
We don't pronounce words very well.
Nope.
We try to laugh and joke at parts that we shouldn't. No, that we shouldn't laugh and joke about. We try to have a laugh with what we're doing.
Yeah. Because you said
while still being serious about.
We'll still remain in respect
Yeah.
for the victims of the cases, but we also understand, and we spoke about this in your previous episode, just how depressing it can become.
Yeah.
Because true crime isn't nice.
So that's what you'll get with this podcast, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So should we jump straight into me and my...
What?
I actually commented back to somebody on TikTok the other day, right? I hope our kids don't read my comments. So someone tried insulting me, right, about how I looked. And I replied saying, well, as long as my husband still wants to tap this, then no problem.
Oh my fucking God.
I'm not wrong.
Get the tablet and do your case read.
Oh, same as somebody told you the other day to run and leave.
Yeah, and I said I fucking tried.
She won't let me. Oh, goodness. Oh. Right, Mr. Hopkins, are you ready? So before we jump into my case, I'll do the usual trigger warning. This episode contains strong descriptions of murder, stabbing, dismemberment, graphic injuries, human remains, and the disposal of a body. So if that is something that you do not want to listen to, I would swipe away now. So we're going to jump back to 2009, and we're going to start in a little video.
She's done it already.
Don't start.
These are bits that we usually cut out.
You're in for a treat. Let's start that again. So we're going to jump back to 2009, and we're going to start in a little village in Hertfordshire called Cotterud. And it's March the 22nd. A green hold-all.
Can I ask what year?
I've just told you. Were you not listening?
March 22nd, you said?
2009. Did I not just say we're going to...
Right, carry on. Bloody hell.
So it's the 22nd of March 2009.
All right, cool.
And a green hold-all was found dumped by a lay-by just off of the A507. Obviously, finding a bag dumped at the side of the road isn't something unusual. People dump rubbish all the time. But when police were called, they found something inside that bag that nobody was expecting. A human leg. At this point, they had absolutely no idea who it belonged to. Then fast forward a week, and another body part would be found. This time, about 25 miles away from where said leg was discovered. And this was in Weatherhampstead.
My mate Yemi would be pissing himself right now.
Oh. They didn't have confirmation yet, but police believed it was highly likely that those two body parts came from one person, and now they had to work out who it belonged to. Forensic examination had given them a few clues. They knew the remains belonged to a white or Asian male, but that was pretty much all they had to go on. They still didn't have a name. Then just a couple days later, another discovery is made, and this time it was about 95 miles away in a village in Leicestershire called Ashfordby. A farmer on his land and spotted something in his field. Once again, police are called, and when they arrive, they discovered a human head. At this point, they've now got a leg, a forearm, and a head. So when this head is examined, they find out it belongs to the same person. Suddenly, they've now got 3 separate parts of the same man turning up across 2 different counties, but they're still no closer to knowing who he actually is. And this is where the investigation got a little bit difficult, because they couldn't just run any fingerprints through a database. They didn't have any hands. When they did check the DNA that they could recover, there was no match on the national database either. So they were basically just left with this unidentified man whose body had clearly been chopped up and left in different places across 2 counties. Police start going through any missing persons reports looking for anyone who might fit the description that they... Police start going through missing persons reports looking for anybody that might fit the description that they've been able to establish from the remains they've found. But then they get a call, and that call is going to change everything. Someone has reported a missing man, and his name is Jeffrey Howe. So, who is Jeffrey? Jeffrey was 49 years old and lived in Southgate, North London. He worked as a kitchen salesman, and from everything that I've read about him, he was described as a really caring, funny, kind bloke. His brother described him as someone with a heart of gold and someone who would pretty much get on with anybody. He'd also previously worked as a chef in Italy, and he was a big football fan. So from everything...
Who did he support?
Do you really want me to tell you? Manchester United.
How can you live in London and support... Mind you, that's where they all come from.
And I purposely left that bit out because I didn't want to say it.
Mm.
So he just sounds like a pretty ordinary bloke. But there was something going on in his personal life that would eventually become very important to the investigation. Jeffrey had allowed a couple he knew to move into his flat. Their names were Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush. Stephen was 38 years old and worked as a personal trainer and bodybuilder. He previously owned a gym, but Stephen and Jeffrey actually knew each other through work in kitchen sales. When Stephen needed somewhere to stay, Jeffrey decided to help him out. So in November of 2008, Stephen moved into Jeffrey's flat in Southgate with his girlfriend, who was 21 years old at the time, Sarah Bush. It wouldn't be long though before things between them started to go wrong. Jeffrey started to complain to other friends that he wanted Sarah and Stephen to leave, but they were refusing. And this is where things got a bit more uncomfortable, because Stephen wasn't just some random bloke who happened to be living in his flat. They knew each other. He's supposed to be your friend, he's living in your home, not paying rent, eating food and refusing to leave. By the middle of March, people started to realise that they'd not heard anything from Jeffrey. When a friend tried getting hold of him and there was no answer, he thought it was pretty strange. So on the 15th of March, that's when Jeffrey was reported missing. Police went round to his flat the following morning, but when they got there, nobody answered, so they forced their way in. They searched the flat, but there was no visible signs of anything to be worried about. His passport was just sitting on the coffee table, there were no signs of a struggle, everything just seemed normal. Stephen and Sarah were still living there, and when police questioned them, they said that as far as they knew, Jeffrey was still alive. He just took himself off.
So how long has he been missing at this point? Do we know?
Well, his friend reported him on 15th of March, and nobody heard from him from the beginning of March. So
the person that you're living with has potentially been missing for 2 weeks.
And
you're living in his house, but you don't know where he is.
Nope, he just took himself off. So at that point, Jeffrey is considered a missing man. But what nobody knows is that he's actually been dead for about a week. So while police, on one hand, are looking for Jeffrey, who they believe is just a missing man, the investigation into the body parts is still ongoing. Police have got a pretty good idea of the man they're looking for, but they still don't have his name. And as forensic examination continues, they establish that the remains they recovered belonged to the same man, and that man would be Jeffrey Howe. So suddenly, this missing person investigation and the investigation into the body parts are connected. But they've still got a massive question to answer. Where had Jeffrey been killed, and who had done it to him? One of the first places that the police start looking is that flat. And as they start to look closely at the people who were actually around him before he went missing, it doesn't take long before Stephen and Sarah come back into the investigation. Because the more police start looking at them two, the more questions they have. And on the 21st of April, Stephen and Sarah are arrested on suspicion of murdering Jeffrey Howe. So with Stephen and Sarah under arrest, police start going back over Jeffrey's flat again. Obviously this time they know they're looking for a potential murder scene.
Yeah.
The first time they went to that flat, they obviously didn't find anything to suggest that there'd been a murder, and everything seemed quite normal. So this time, when they went back to that flat, there was quite a lot of blood found. Not just a tiny trace here and there. Investigators found blood in the bathroom and in the bedroom. And suddenly they're no longer looking at a flat where Jeffrey had just supposedly disappeared. There's evidence that he'd actually been murdered inside that flat. And then the police noticed something else. Jeffrey's bed isn't there anymore. And instead is a blow-up mattress. Usually, on its own, it don't mean anything. People have blow-up mattresses. But when you're investigating a murder and you've already found blood in that bedroom and bathroom, you're now going to have to look at that mattress a little bit differently. So police start looking into what happened to Jeffrey's original bed. They eventually find evidence linking that mattress to the disposal of his body. But before we get into all that evidence, I think we need to talk about what actually happened to Jeffrey and how he was actually murdered. The police conclude that Jeffrey was killed inside that flat on the night of the 8th or into the early hours of the 9th of March 2009. They say he was stabbed twice in the back and one of these wounds punctured his lung. According to prosecution, after Jeffrey had been killed, his body was then dismembered inside his flat. And this dismemberment wasn't somebody in a panic just hacking away at a body. The way the cuts had been made were extremely precise.
Right.
The limbs had been separated around the joints wherever possible, rather than just trying to cut through bone.
I was just about to say, he worked with him in kitchens, but he worked with him in kitchen sales, wasn't it?
Yes.
So it's not like they were chefs.
No.
So how the fuck does he know how to do this shit?
We'll get there, Mr. Hopkins.
However,
You hadn't done that for a few episodes. And then the forensic evidence suggested that whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. And then there's what's happened to Jeffrey's head. When it was eventually found in that field, the flesh had been removed from around the skull. His eyes, ears and tongue had been cut away, and parts of his neck had also been removed. And this is where Stephen Marshall becomes really important in this investigation, because during the trial, evidence came out about Stephen's previous connections to the Addams family, a notorious crime family from North London. One witness that testified in court said that Stephen previously boasted about cutting up bodies for the family when he was working as a bouncer in the 1990s. She said Stephen described being given bodies to deal with, cutting them up and putting the remains into bags before they were then collected and taken away and buried in different places. He talked about using things like meat cleavers, large meat knives, hacksaw and chainsaw. On the 1st of February 2010, Stephen's own barrister, Peter Doyle, told the court that Stephen had in fact admitted that he had actually helped dismember 4 other bodies between 1995 and 1998. This was also when Stephen was working as a bouncer. His account was that 4 men who had already been killed by someone else, they brought them to the nightclub during the night, and Stephen said he was asked to help dismember them, and that other people then came to collect the remains and took them to Epping Forest.
He were part of clean-up crew.
Yeah, I've seen it so many times. And now we've got Jeffrey, whose body has been dismembered with an incredibly high level of precision. It's not proof on its own that Stephen carried out that dismemberment, but it's a pretty bloody significant piece of the puzzle. So police are now finally starting to piece together exactly what happened after Jeffrey was killed. We already know that his remains were turning up in completely different locations, but when investigators started looking at how those remains had been packed and moved, they began finding links back to Jeffrey's flat. So we've got his right leg, which was found near Puckeridge, and it had been wrapped in rubber bags and sealed with tape. When forensic scientists examined that tape, they found green fibres which matched fibres from a t-shirt which was found in Stephen's bedroom. So finally, they've got something physically linking the way in which Jeffrey's remains had been packed to something inside that flat where Stephen lived.
Well, they've linked him to that body part.
Yep. And then you've got locations where the different parts of Jeffrey's bodies were found. So you've got his leg that were in Cotteroyd, you've got his forearm in Witherhampstead, you've got his head over in Leicestershire, and a leg near Puckeridge. And on the 11th of April, a green suitcase was found in a drainage ditch at Collins End. Inside that suitcase was Jeffrey's torso, his right arm, and his upper part of his left arm. Jeffrey's hands have never been recovered. So by this point, police believe they've got a pretty clear picture of what's happened to Jeffrey. It hadn't just been dumped somewhere and left. His remains had been deliberately separated, packaged up and taken to different locations. But now they needed to work out exactly how Stephen and Sarah had managed to get Jeffrey's remains out of the flat and dispose of them without drawing any attention to themselves. And this is where Stephen's movements start to become important, because police were able to piece together his movements using things like CCTV, his phone records and evidence from the car that he was using. One thing that they did discover was that Stephen had been using Jeffrey's car after his death, and they also found blood in the boot of his car that belonged to him. And that becomes a really important part because it gives investigators a potential link between that flat and places where his remains had been dumped. But there's another problem for Stephen and Sarah. They had to try and explain what had happened to Jeffrey's belongings, because his possessions were also starting to disappear. His mobile phone was being used, his bank account was being accessed, and his car was being advertised for sale. Stephen and Sarah weren't just trying to get rid of Jeffrey's body, they were also trying to take over his life.
And take his money.
Almost immediately after Jeffrey was killed, his bank account started being used. They were spending his money, buying themselves clothes, shoes, takeaways, food. Stephen sold Jeffrey's mobile phone at cash converters. He then created an email account pretending to be Jeffrey, setting up a eBay account where he then decided to list Jeffrey's car for sale.
No remorse whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely no remorse. Stephen and Sarah, at this point, obviously, are using his money, selling his belongings, and according to the prosecution, trying to make it look as though Jeffrey was still alive, but just simply living somewhere else. They even went as far as forging Jeffrey's signature to try and claim housing benefit for the flat. And at one point, Stephen actually went with Sarah to the benefits office, pretending to be her uncle. So this weren't just about getting rid of his body.
Pretending to be her uncle?
Yeah, to sign for these benefits.
For whose benefits?
So she was applying to get housing benefit, claiming that Jeffrey was renting out his flat to them.
Right.
And I don't know why her uncle.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know why. So the prosecution's case was that the whole point was to make Jeffrey disappear, to take his home, take his money, while making it look like he'd simply just walked away. When this case eventually got to court, Stephen and Sarah did not tell the same story about what had happened. Stephen admitted that he did dismember Jeffrey and dispose of his remains. What he was denying was the actual murder.
Did they turn on each other?
Absolutely turned on
Like they always fucking do.
Absolutely turned on each other. In fact, at the start of the trial, Stephen's version was that Sarah was the one that killed him and that he only became involved afterwards. Sarah was saying that she denied murdering Jeffrey and denied being involved in either removing him or dismembering him. So, two people, both living at the flat, both facing murder charges and essentially blaming each other for what's happened. And this is where evidence from Sarah's friend became important, because one of her friends testified in court that Sarah had in fact admitted to her that it was Stephen that killed Jeffrey. She said that Sarah told her that she'd witnessed the killing, and another witness said that Sarah described Stephen stabbing Jeffrey in the back and shouting at her to put a pillow over his face. So at this point, you've got Stephen saying one thing, Sarah saying another, and the jury have got a job to work out who they actually believe. But then, 3 weeks into the trial, Stephen changed his plea. Up until that point, he admitted that he did dismember Jeffrey and dispose of his remains, but he continued to deny that he murdered him. But on the 29th of January 2010, when the murder charges were put to him again, Stephen decided to plead guilty.
Which a lot of them do.
Yeah.
It's like deny. Or actually, I'm up shit
street without a paddle here.
Yeah.
So this guilty plea meant that the jury no longer had to decide whether he killed Jeffrey. It was more of a question now of what involvement did Sarah have. And as the trial continued, the evidence against Sarah was looking different from the evidence against Stephen. She continued to deny that she murdered Jeffrey, and she also denied being involved in dismembering his body. But there was evidence that she had been involved in taking his remains from that flat and helped dispose of them in different places. So eventually, Sarah admitted that she had been with Stephen when he took Jeffrey's head and dumped it. She also admitted that she helped Stephen cover up what he'd done, and that she lied to police and the people that knew Jeffrey, helping to maintain the story that he just simply walked away. So on the 1st of February 2010, Sarah pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice. She was acquitted of Jeffrey's murder. And although she wasn't convicted of that murder, she still wasn't walking away from court without a prison sentence.
Yeah, which she shouldn't.
She was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison.
And that's not enough.
No, it's not. For helping Stephen dispose of Jeffrey's remains. She also received a further sentence of 2 years and 3 months for giving false information about Jeffrey's whereabouts. And they would be concurrently. Now, Stephen was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. And the judge was...
Bye-bye.
The judge was absolutely scathing about what he'd done to Jeffrey. He told Stephen that Jeffrey had looked up to him, he had been frightened of him, intimidated by him, and that Stephen had exploited that trust.
He put a fucking roof over your head.
Yeah. And when it came to Sarah, the judge also made it clear that he believed she knew exactly what Stephen had done. He told her that she had taken advantage of Jeffrey while he was alive and then continued to take advantage after his death by using his money. Even after everything that the police recovered, there's still parts of Jeffrey that's never been found. So, again, his hands to this day have never been recovered. So despite all the work that went into finding these remains, identifying and piecing together what happened, there were still parts of Jeffrey that his family have never been able to lay to rest. Jeffrey was just an ordinary bloke who helped someone out he considered a friend, and that trust ultimately cost him his life.
How many times does this happen when someone does something and goes out of their way for someone, and someone repays them by killing them.
We've seen it a lot.
The Twisted Sisters, that bloke helped the sister, he let her stay with him, and
Yep.
she attacked him with a fucking hammer.
Yeah.
It happens all the fucking time.
So what started with a green hold all dumped at the side of the road ended with investigators uncovering a murder, a dismemberment, an attempt to take over a man's entire life. And that is the story of the man, Stephen Marshall, who the media would come to call the Jigsaw Man.
The Jigsaw Man?
Yeah.
How have I never fucking heard of that?
So that's the murder of Jeffrey Howe.
It's always a good one when you just don't know fuck all about it. Because I think, I would have thought with a nickname, the Jigsaw Man, I might have heard about it, but no, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I've not heard of it. It's UK, and like you say, with a name like the Jigsaw Man, you would think that you would have heard, but no.
Also, it depends what papers they were calling in the Jigsaw Man. It could have been Daily Sport. And I don't read newspapers anyway.
I don't think, does anybody read newspapers? So that's it. Episode
10.
Done. We will be back next week with episode 11.
Yeah, which is the request from our good friend Charmaine, who lives in Canada.
Yeah. And it's going to be, it's a bad one because I've seen your face during your...
Yeah. We're doing all right on terms of Spotify and that, aren't we?
Yeah. And YouTube. It's actually slowly.
Yep. So...
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
See you next week.
Love you, bye.
Bye.